Welcome back to the Weekly Show. I'm Michael Kilburn, your host, and sitting with me in the studio is Congressman John Tierney from the 6th District of Massachusetts. Welcome, Congressman. Thank you so much for joining us.
I think I'm happy to be here, depending on how you described your show a minute ago. We'll see.
Okay, well, we'll see at the end. Right of first refusal.
Right.
Okay, good. Just to loosen things up a little bit, I wondered if you could talk about your earlier life, your background, how you got into politics in the first place.
I was a poor boy.
The log cabin?
Yeah, the log cabin story comes out. No, I grew up in Salem. Went to Salem Public Schools. My interest in politics really stemmed from an uncle that I had who was a local business fellow in Peabody in a little real estate sales business and an insurance company who got involved as a city councilor in Ward 2. They used to call it Crow Village in those days. That's where he and my dad and the brothers and sisters grew up. And I was always fascinated by the public service aspect of it, that how much he could get accomplished and how much people depended on him to carry the message for them down at City Hall. And I thought this is a great way to get involved and to be hopefully productive. And it's interesting, but as I went on to school and kept going, I thought it'd be nicer if it had a mix of things, like some local issues, some state issues, some national issues. And so I never really focused on the city council, things of that nature, and I went out and started my law practice. And then decided one day Congress would be a thing where I thought I hopefully could be effective and would enjoy doing it as well, and an opportunity presented itself, at least in my mind. And I ran and lost the first time, so it was in my mind, but it was a close race. Then the second time we won, and we've been successful since then. But it was that idea of wanting to have a meaningful life that really allowed you to contribute something, but also kept you interested, and kept you focused, and it's a terrific job in that regard.
Yeah, and you've maintained a good connection between the high levels of office and the local people. But so did it just occur to you one day that I think I'd like to be a member of Congress?
No. I always talked about it. Even back when I was in school, I always thought that was a great job. If you're going to do public service, it would be a great place to do it. But in the meantime, you're not ever sure that you're going to have an opportunity. I mean, there's so much involved in running, and the districts are so large. So I busied myself with, being on the school board of trustees at the college and getting involved in local politics, helping other candidates, or being on a school, not the school committee, but a committee dealing with school combinations and various things. And then at one point in time, I thought my law practice was situated so that it would be something I could try to do, and I thought the opportunity was there. And a friend of mine had called up, and he was involved in politics a little more than I was. He said, you always said that you thought that'd be a great job. Why don't you just do it?
All right. Okay, good. So enough small talk. You're all
Enough
warmed
small
up
talk.
now?
Yeah, here we go.
Okay. I'd like to start. The first question is sort of a hypothetical.
What if I tell you I don't answer hypotheticals? Am I off the hook?
They tried that before. You're a member of in my opinion, the most democratic political institution in this country, and some people would say the most democratic institution in the world. But we all know that democracy can be frustrating and slow. You've had a lot of success with your legislation. I'm sure you've had a lot of frustrations too. So if I were to give you absolute power, if you were king, say, or president of a unitary executive, what would you do? What are the top 3 things that you would do to address the kind of issues that you're working for anyway, but suddenly with absolute power?
Well, I mean, I think the first thing you need to do is have health care for everybody. I mean, I think that just cuts across a lot of different issues all at once. I think that you would certainly improve the education interest that we have here, really focus in on that. Job training I include in education on that, and the job creation part as well, all the things we need to do to keep people working. And I would just redirect our foreign policy in a way that allowed us to spend our money that way. I think that the world is changing, and we're going to have to build some alliances with other countries and have some cooperation for the kinds of threats that we do. And if we do that and we do it right, then we won't be spending $12 billion a month in Iraq, and those resources can come here to strengthen the core of this country, which makes it stronger externally as well as internally. But I think for people, what would make a difference in their life is health care and a real focus on education and jobs, and I think it's always been that way. Yeah.
Okay, so education and jobs, those are your 2 wishes.
Health care, don't forget the health care.
Health care and, right. Now those seem like obvious things to me. So because you don't have absolute power, is there something in the system that's holding this back, or do other constituents really see?
No, I think healthcare has been an issue. I'm going to my 12th year now. When I ran for the first time, the one that I lost in '93, I can remember being asked to leave houses of doctors because I was talking about universal health care, which they always saw as the socialistic health care, which is not. It has nothing to do with it, but they've changed the language around these bills to drive people.
Right. I'm Canadian.
Canadian, well, so you know how a system would work.
Yeah.
But we have enough examples out there, that we can take the best and apply it to our needs or whatever and have a good system. But over that period of time, people have come along, even the Mass Medical Society now. A bunch of them were in the other day, something like, oh yeah, we really think we need universal health care. A lot of industries do. The dynamic is you've got a huge insurance industry with lots of people working for them and a ton of money. You saw what they did with the Harriet and Louise commercials back in the 90s. So that's the institutionalization of this private system for profit is a big hurdle to overcome. I think we're building more and more people along the way who understand that we have to do that, and it won't be socialist medicine, and it'll be different, it'll be our brand, but we've got to be smarter about that. It's just eating up too much money and putting too much people behind the 8 ball. So those types of things. Education, I think people generally believe in education, so it's a growing process. We've improved our education since the industrial age. It's changed, but it's a new age now. So we really have to be looking at what are you going to do about early childhood education. We've seen that you can close the achievement gap 50%. You get kids 4 years old and 3 years old. And we now know that you need to go beyond the 12th grade. So we'll focus on that. It's a sort of a growing process.
Right. I think it's pretty admirable, by the way. Most people, if they win the lottery, they want to quit their job and move to southern France. And here I give you absolute power, and you want to do the same stuff you're trying to do already. So power to you.
Thank you.
Not absolute power, but
no, I
power
understand.
to you. Okay. So speaking of undemocratic institutions, you are a superdelegate, whether you like it or not. So who are you going to vote for?
Well, I'm going to take a bunch of things into consideration.
Okay.
All right? And
Fair
I think
enough.
one of them obviously is the way that I feel, my own personal feelings, that can't discount that, but the way my district and state voted. I think who's ahead and how far they're ahead at the time it comes to the convention will be important. Whether or not anybody has shot themselves in the foot between the time of the last primary and the convention, I think if somebody
or shot somebody else in the foot.
Or shot somebody else
or
in
the
the
face.
foot, that's going to be an issue. So those dynamics will come into play as you make a decision. I, for instance, will not vote for somebody who's substantially behind another person and catapult them before them, unless the other person has become an unviable candidate.
Right.
On that basis, I think that in my deference, there wouldn't be super delegates. It would just be a straight out vote for people and get in there. So
Fair enough.
I think we have to try to be responsible about it.
Yeah, and I'm not going to try and nail you down on
No, but
TV or anything, but if you had to choose, would you choose, say, a man or a woman? No?
I think the thing is, it may come that, at some point before the convention, a bunch of delegates think that they have to make a statement for a particular reason. It would depend on what happens out there. But the way it's structured right now, I think the more responsible thing to do is wait. We'll see. Things happen so fast. I just wish that everybody would get off the horse race for a minute and get back to the issues. I think we've got such better positions on these issues than Mr. McCain or the Republican Party right now. Why lose the advantage? Let them both run, go out there, but talk about the issues. I mean, on all the issues, healthcare, education, foreign policy, security, on that. This is an election the Democrats should do very, very well in.
Right.
So let's talk about it. Let's forget the horse race for a while. It's just too easy for the press. Not you in particular.
No,
it's too easy
I'm
for the
not
press
press.
to talk about who's ahead and what the polls say, that they actually have to think of a question about an issue and move forward.
Well, speaking of the issues, and this is a campaign, this is an election year, and one could be forgiven for forgetting that there's more than 3 people actually running for office in this country. You're running for office yourself. And I wonder if you had any thoughts on the system of campaigning. For example, the leading presidential candidates, by the time November comes around, they will have been campaigning longer than your term. So is there some sort of campaign restructuring, or what are your thoughts on the whole process?
Well, they need mental health plans, but they need to do that. I mean, that's a terrible burden. But look, I think the money is part of the problem on this. That a lot of it is fundraising, constant fundraising, because it's so expensive to reach out to 650,000 people in just a congressional district. Millions in a statewide race and more in a presidential race. If we could have public funding of campaigns, which happens to be my bill, so maybe I'm touting something that I've been with now since the first day I got in Congress, but I really think it'd make a difference. People's perceptions are so cynical right now on that. I don't think any of my colleagues are necessarily corrupt. The ones that are corrupt are in jail or on their way to jail. But by and large, people want to do a good job. They all go there for the best motivations. But if you're raising money, then you're probably spending more time with people who have money than you ought to on that, unless you have a very, very vigorous schedule outside of your married life and your family life, running around seeing everybody else. So I think that would be a principal thing. I think people would have a sense that they then own their government. It would be a little costly, but not in comparison to what people think they're losing by tax subsidies and credits and things like that are going to special interest. I think if they knew they could get a vote and grab some of that stuff back without the feeling that somebody was trying to either encourage favor or help a special interest or whatever, they'd all feel better and the system would be much improved.
Yeah.